so many people are starting to create livelihoods online, and we want to enable that. We think the creator economy is beautiful and only growing. Imagine if you're no longer tied to the algorithm and you can reach your audience, you can create your own apps. Like, what does that world look like? How do you put together events and shopping and your online presence in one place? Bluesky is going to enable all of that.
It is Buffer Chat time, friends in our virtual studio and folks listening at home. As always, a very warm and buffery welcome to you. My name is Kirsty Lang. I'm a senior writer at Buffer. And oh my goodness, do we have a very cool guest in the studio today? I kind of wanted to start this call by saying something like, or this podcast recording by saying something like, Bluesky has taken off in recent months. But honestly, that feels like a horrific understatement. So I'm just going to start by saying that Bluesky has absolutely skyrocketed to, I think you are at 25 million users since opening your proverbial doors to the public in February of 2024. And so by December, you hit that incredible 25 million user mark, which is absolutely wild to me. Joining me today is, of course, Rose Wang, who is the COO of Bluesky. Rose, thank you for making the time. I know you have so much going on right now, so I really appreciate you joining the podcast. So for those of you who are new to the platform, Bluesky offers a unique space where users have more control of their feeds and ownership of their content. It's built on the open source AT protocol, which allows you to grow your community and potentially even take it with you when you move platforms, if you decide to move platforms, which is absolutely a game changer for creators. So yes, today I'm thrilled to be joined by Rose. Thank you for making the time, Rose. This is going to be a fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Kirsty.
As I mentioned, Rose is the Chief Operating Officer of Bluesky. She has held, Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, you have held various roles at the company since 2021. So you have really been a part of the journey from the get-go. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you came to land at Bluesky and what your role involves right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say thank you to Buffer as one of our, I believe, our first partner in having cross-posting and scheduled post for creators out there. You guys believed in us way before this big hyper growth. And so it's just really a pleasure for me to be here. But yeah, in terms of how I landed at Bluesky, the story is actually really heartwarming because I do think that Bluesky is a community-driven platform, and it's because I think the people who are running it are community-driven people offline. So Jay and I actually met living in a community house during the pandemic, so we lived together.
Wow.
And this was the time that she was actually being interviewed for project lead of Bluesky. And I remember those days where she was practicing her presentation with our house. And it was truly inspiring to hear her vision of democratizing the web. And it was a completely new vision that we'd never seen before. It was a paradigm shift. And so my big question was always, but when? Like, there has to be enough pain point for people, for users to then want to switch. And this was 2021 where, the world was very different back then. And during that time, we still were most people were quite happy in their online homes. And so what ended up happening was Jay and I just kind of worked together in a more loose capacity. And then when she actually launched the company, initially it was unclear if we were going to be under a team under Twitter, much like the community notes team was called they were called Birdwatch. We were Bluesky, and they continued under, and then we actually split out as an independent company at the very end of 2021. And so that's actually when Jay and I worked together to help spin up Bluesky as a separate company. And technically on day one, it was just me and her getting it set up. And then I was working actually on my own company on the side. So I was just helping her kind of set up some of the business sides of the business, but back then it was just a research project. It was looking at how do we build a protocol for Twitter. And so she had hired two engineers at the time, Paul, who's now our CTO, and Daniel Holmgren, who's now our head of protocol. And they were just working on how does the at protocols, what we call it, because the idea is where are you at in the future? And you can say, here's my address. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I had no idea. I've been going AT protocol, at protocol.
Yeah,
Okay.
protocol. Yeah. And so we like play on words a lot at Blue Sky. And so
I love
essentially,
that.
as millennials.
Yeah.
And so then, but essentially now, sorry. So then after basically Elon had announced that he was going to buy Twitter, that's when we knew things were going to change because Twitter was no longer going to take on our protocol. They had different priorities, which is fine. And so that's when I joined the team full time when I realized, oh, we're going to launch an app. We're going to have a go to market. And that was the perfect time.
Okay, that is fascinating. I had no idea it was just you and Jay right at the beginning. That's incredible. I feel like I didn't kind of want to get super into the weeds, but what on protocols and things, we really wanted to focus on the social side of things. But listening to you talk now, it's just really made me realize how ingrained they are. So I'd love it if you could just kind of explain is it a fair assessment to say at protocol came before Blue Sky?
It is I would say that, well, it depends on what we mean by Blue Sky, because there's Blue Sky, the
Okay.
company that came first.
Yes.
And then
Okay.
there's that protocol that we built initially for Twitter to run on. And
Yes.
had that not changed, Twitter not changed hands, I think that we might have never seen a Blue Sky app. But because Twitter was no longer going to use our protocol, we had to showcase what the protocol could do. And so we built an app, what we used to call a reference client. And then it just so happened that lots of people really loved what we were building. But they're very commingled, as you are saying, because the app is built on top of our protocol. And even though it looks like a Twitter or some sort of known microblogging experience, it's actually quite different under the hood.
Yeah.
And when we talk about decentralization, it's just a fancy word, which means that there's not a single authority that makes all the decisions. It's how we
Yes.
want to live offline. And so, what does that look like? Well, on other Web 2 social apps like Threads and X, you have a small group of people who decide um, on the one or two feeds you're given what you see, what gets to be there. They're deciding the curation of information and as well as the moderation, which is the taking away of information.
Yes.
Same side of the, or two sides of the same coin. And so for Blue Sky, what we believe is that let's just take both of those things, moderation, curation, and open it up where anyone can create a feed, as you had mentioned, or anyone can go create a moderation label. And there are things that maybe we're not thinking about in the terms of service, like movie spoilers or speculative information or rude posts, right? There's nothing you can do on other apps, but on Blue Sky, any user can go spin up those labelers. So, and then other users can subscribe. And that's what we've done is create a toolbox for users to create the community, the experience that works for them. Because there's no one size fits all in our home and
Yeah.
society. And so, why do we expect to live like that online?
Absolutely. Oh, that makes so much sense. I love that you're effectively saying, hey, your algorithm is your algorithm. We're not going to make guesses about what you want to see. You can very intentionally decide what you want to see and what you don't want to see. I also love, I think one of my favorite things about Blue Sky is the way I'm able to block spoilers for myself. So for about a week after a new video game came out that I was really excited about, Blue Sky was the only social platform that I was using because I was not going to see spoilers. And I'd set up my little... Anyway,
It's
getting into the
perfect.
weeds again. Okay, so this kind of leads me into my next question. You've kind of answered this a little bit. I was going to ask you about, apart from being decentralized, what sets Blue Sky apart? What makes it different from other social networks? So we've talked a little bit about moderation, custom feeds. Have we missed anything big picture there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ultimately comes down to three things that we have really prioritized when we think about Blue Sky. And we think about it from your perspective, not like here's some cool tool or cool feature. It's we have three pillars. One, that users always will have choice. That two, developers have locked open APIs, meaning they can always build. And then that three, creators have and owned the direct relationship with their audience. And and so if those are our three guiding principles, that's how we design our protocol. That's how we design our app. And so there's lots of features that we'll try and they'll come and go because some might not work, but it's all to further these three missions.
Okay, I love that. That makes so much sense. That leads me again into the next question I wanted to ask you. I've heard a lot of folks talking about how, and I think I've seen this on Bluesky's own site, the idea that you can port your audience. So you can build your audience, and if you want to move off Bluesky, you can take your audience with you. What are the nuts and bolts of that? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think it's a really hard question to answer in terms of how Bluesky is different because in so many ways it's like asking how 1950s TV is different from YouTube. Like it's kind of the same, like you're watching content from, a four wall screen. But everything else then is different in terms of what content is created, that the channels can be created by individuals, that they get to decide if they want to even be on YouTube or not. These are the types of things that are very different today. And so for Bluesky, for example, even just like we talked about how you can choose different feeds, you can create feeds, different moderation labels, but then there's also different apps. So initially Bluesky, for example, didn't show your likes, like the likes tab. This is a common, like some people like it, some people don't. There was another app that spun off that was similar-ish to Bluesky. It looked like it was called Gray Sky, and because we've open sourced our app, and they had a likes tab, and you as a user can choose. Actually, I like Gray Sky more than Bluesky, and I'm just gonna leave. And so, what does that leave look like? Well, because you have the same identity system and you own it because it's your domain or your website URL, then you can just log into Gray Sky and all your followers, everybody's still there because the data doesn't live on Bluesky, the app. It lives in this fire hose of data that's open to any developer who wants to access it. And that's what makes it open and public, and you can move cities much like you can move platforms basically. And so that's the way that we envision the future is there's so many different ways in which you can customize your experience, and some ways you don't want to customize but somebody else has done it for you and you can just go there. And so what we believe is that users should vote with their feet, and developers will build such cool things because that fires a hose of data of like all the different users, your likes, posts are all available for devs to build on top of. And that just makes it a completely different experience.
Yeah, and that feels particularly, I want to say, poignant now with everything going on with Twitter, people there potentially losing, big audiences and followings that they've built up in the US. It's scary because some folks, it's their livelihood.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not only, I think the crazy thing is it's not only like leaving is hard, but it's also finding out that the home you've been living in hasn't been serving you. I think that's the other thing that creators are starting to realize. So recently, Bluesky, because we have all these different feeds, what we found is that different publishers are finding different engagement and traffic numbers to um, off platform from Threads, X, and Bluesky. So I think The Guardian reported that their first week on Bluesky, where they only had 300,000 followers, had more traffic and engagement than all of 2024 on X, where they had 10.8 million followers. So
What?
it's crazy. Yeah. So some things we know that these platforms will let you curate and build your audience up until you want to leave and bring them to a
Yeah.
different experience. And that's what most creators want, right? We're building an audience, we're doing the work to put our ideas out there. But then the goal is that we own that relationship. So then if I'm a stand-up comedian and I'm posting funny posts all the time, but then I want to send people to my show, I should be able to do that and reach my entire audience. But that's not happening. As soon as you post the link for your stand-up show, what we're seeing is that people are getting depromoted and punished. And so then, like, their posts that are funny that get 1,000 likes because it helps people stay on platform.
Yeah.
Then, as soon as they try to ask folks to leave to go to see a show and they get 60 likes, they're like, something's wrong, right? And so that's the promise of Blue Sky is there's no manipulation because you get to make your own algorithm. You get to own that relationship with your audience. And so it's flexible. You can go create a feed or a list and you can directly reach your folks and there's no de-promoting links on Blue Sky.
Yeah, and you don't have to put the link in bio. You don't have to put the link in the first comment. I mean, it's wild that we've started to adopt these behaviors. Anyway, I wanted to kind of get a little bit more just for perhaps intermediate Blue Sky users. So perhaps I've set up an account and I've kind of started playing around on the platform, but I haven't necessarily found my people on Blue Sky. What would your advice be to someone like that who's kind of still finding their feet on the platform?
Yeah, well, I would say welcome. And this is a really normal experience. And it's why we built something called starter packs to help people who are looking for a cozier corner to join. Because I think it's extremely daunting to try to jump into a global conversation. Frankly, I turned off of Twitter about 10 times until a friend followed 300 people for me. And then I was like, oh, this is so
I get it
nice.
now.
Yeah. And so this is the point of starter packs is users who are community curators will go and put together list of followers and some more curated feeds for you. And so then when you join with that link or QR code, you're joining a cozy corner of Blue Sky. So Buffer can put together a Buffer starter pack of
We have. It exists.
and you should follow the Buffer starter pack. Let me read.
It's a great space. I'm just gonna put that out there. We'll put the link in the show notes. Blue Sky also has their own starter pack as well, which I followed. I have to ask, did the idea for starter packs come from your friend taking over your Twitter and following accounts for you?
You know what's really funny about good ideas is that it was at one team retreat, I don't know, like 6 months ago, and maybe five of us had the same idea, all from different experiences. And this is what you get when I think you have a team that uses like we are obsessed. We're on the app all the time. And so we have that direct experience of what it's like when we see our friends on board, when we try to get friends to on board. And then we also tend to make new accounts all the time for ourselves because we know that the experience as like Blue Sky team members is probably different than an average new user. And so that dog fooding is I think what enables the team to constantly in some way like a good idea. I don't know, I don't think this is like always true, but one measure is like a few other people have the same idea separate because of the actual experience, the anecdotal experience that drove that feature or that need.
Yeah, that it feels almost serendipitous and kind of using starter packs. And when I first onboarded to Blue Sky, it feels quite obvious. Like, why is this not a standard feature when joining a new platform? And I've seen some other platforms have started introducing similar things
True.
in recent weeks.
We're we're
Threads.
happy for the innovation to happen in social because it hasn't, and so
Yeah.
if we needed to enter the market for that to happen, then that's a very good outcome.
That's a great way of looking at things. I love that. Okay, coming back to creators. So that's obviously a huge portion of the folks that we work with are creators and folks growing their personal brands on social. So one of the things that they are most concerned with all the work they do is the reach of their content. So is their content going to reach their followers first and foremost? Is their content going to reach new people? Bearing in mind what we've spoken about already, how is Blue Sky different when it comes to content reach and discovery from that lens?
Yeah, well, the reason why the reach is so, let's say, unpredictable on other platforms when there's one algorithm is because it's all about the question is like what is the algorithm optimizing for? And so what we understand from other platforms is their business model and their incentive. And so their business model is advertising. It's, hey, how do we sell your private data to brands who are going to pay to reach you at a certain time, at a certain occasion, right, with a special interest. And as soon as you leave the platform, they lose your data, aka their revenue that they can then get from advertisers. And so for them, it's not that this is like good or bad, this is just facts, right? This is the reality of like how they set up incentive structures. And so then the incentive structure here is time spent. The more time spent, the better. And so then you have algorithms that are constantly promoting that particular engagement metric. And when you have a time spent North Star, then what ends up happening is people leaving is bad, right? You leaving platform should be behavior that they don't encourage. And so then ultimately that's why these links outside of the app gets depromoted, because they're losing out on their revenue stream. And that's unlikely to change. They would have to change their business models from the ground up and lots of their scale. It's like trying to turn the Titanic. Bluesky got to start in a new world where the way we kind of see it is advertising the way that it currently happens on other platforms. We call it like a resource curse. It's kind of like a country discovering oil and then realizing like, oh, it's so lucrative. Why would I diversify outside of that economy? And it's not that it's, not money making. It's that there's probably lots of other ways to make money. And so that's what we believe at Bluesky is we're not going to do advertising the way that traditional social has done. And thus, we're not trying to lock you in, which is why engagement we think is better, is because with all these different feeds and with us not manipulating the algorithm in a way that promotes either the most polarizing post or biggest brands or whatever they think is going to get you to stick, it's more about, for us, like looking for healthy engagement of, are people making friends? Are they like liking posts? And are people with less than 20 followers or following 20 people, are they having a good time? And so when we use those metrics as what's healthy and what we're measuring, then what ends up happening is that people are then promoting links. They're finding each other. Those links are getting clicked, and then the publishers are coming out with the data to show that actually, like, it's not only is the traffic higher from Bluesky, but that the conversion of paying subscribers is higher. Like the Boston Globe saw 4.5x the paying subscribers from Bluesky than Threads, even though Threads claims to have 100 million daily active users. But what are they doing?
Yeah, those numbers are absolutely blowing my mind. The Guardian, I think that was what you shared previously. That is wild. Yeah, and as someone who has worked in publishing previously, you've had to be so creative in the way that you share your content, and if you clicks are what you're after or what you're trying to drive. That is fascinating. Coming back to creators, if I hop on Bluesky as a creator and I'm looking to build my personal brand a little bit further, how does that come into play in terms of kind of is the goal then for me to get onto custom feeds, or is the reach something that will happen organically if I continue to post engaging content? What should I be shooting for?
Yeah, I love this question. So I think that on other platforms, there's like one big game that most people play, which is post or not post. Like, am I a good poster or not? And that's like the only status game available. And I think it's also why then people have forgotten what it's like to post content and how fun it is to get engagement. And so on Bluesky, I think what's really exciting here is that it's not just about the posters. We have a new role, the community curators, builders, who put together starter packs or feeds, and they just they're not big posters, but because they've done so much for the community, they have tons of followers, like 50,000, they have tons of engagement, and people look to them as a community curator or someone to follow because they have good taste. And so I think that there's many ways to be successful on Bluesky. But the most important thing is it's about bringing authenticity. I think that's there is always tools and product, but there's always like a culture and vibe of a community. And that's also important to point out. And I think for Bluesky, because we started with very online people like Drill, that is still very much the culture of Bluesky. It's I think why lots of publishers and creators like us is because we still love the word. I think text and words are sacred to us, and that's something that we want to keep microblogging as a content form alive. But also, I think that there's lots of different ways to get engaged if that's not your favorite way, right? There's so much engagement in the replies. There's these cozier feeds where you can just hang out with your Moss friends or your medieval history friends, and you don't have to go to the bigger party. And so I think truly, it sounds like there's a lot, but it's not that. It's just more like rather than one feed, we've given you a bunch of feeds to choose from that were created by other people. And then because these feeds are cozier corners, you just actually make friends and people are a lot friendlier. And then on top, we have very rigorous and strong moderation to ensure that you have a good time. And then we have like the strongest block on other platforms, things like that that really enable you to feel safe.
Yeah, no, we do appreciate a strong block. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I love what you said about cozy corners. I think that's so interesting because you really are focusing on, and I think, a lot of platforms kind of talk about building your community, but this really does feel like it. Some of my custom feeds that I'm in on Bluesky are just so fulfilling and wholesome, and it's great to have found that space on the internet again. Yeah, I love what you guys have built. I'm such a big fan. Something that you have touched on already when we talked about kind of advertising models and how other social platforms make money. I've seen a little bit of discussion about how, we know Bluesky is going to have long-term staying power, but how is that going to work? So I've seen some stuff now about a subscription model that has been, mentioned. What would that look like for users on Bluesky? And is that a reality?
We will launch subscriptions. It was going to be end of this year, but probably early next year is looking more like the timeline. And for subscriptions, it's a way for users to get more what we call self-expression tools. So like you can have a custom icon. There's going to be some interesting things with custom domains in there, like longer or more video uploads, things like that. But we would never put features like posting or bookmarks or like actual core features of the app behind a paywall. That's just not the point of the subscriptions. What we do want to encourage is right now we're seeing a lot of creators, a lot of developers and curators who are getting paid on Patreon and Ko-fi for the feeds that they've created or, a little bot that they created that people really love. And so what we want to do is follow that. We think that, just like you said, so many people are starting to create livelihoods online, and we want to enable that. We think the creator economy is beautiful and only growing, and we should increase, like the market cap there, I think is currently just enormous, but it's capped because they can only produce what the platforms will show, and like you're kind of tied to the algorithm. But imagine if you're no longer tied to the algorithm and you can reach your audience, you can create your own apps. Like, what does that world look like? And we have how do you put together events and shopping and your online presence in one place? Bluesky is going to enable all of that. And so where we want monetization to go is to align our incentives with our users, creators, and developers. And so as they're making more money, we should be making money. But if they're not making money, we shouldn't be making money. And so our goal is let's build a payment system so that it enables these payments to work on the app and across, other apps on the ecosystem much easier. And then we'll increase the volume of those transactions, and the creators and folks take home most of it, and we just take a percentage of the transaction fee.
Amazing. So monetization is coming to Bluesky
Absolutely,
for
but
creators.
not the way. Yeah, totally for creators. that's going to come, and then that's what we're focused on, building in the next. I mean, coming is like, 12 months. It takes
Yeah.
your payment systems take a while, but absolutely, it's things that we are prioritizing.
Oh, that's so exciting. I love that so much. I was trying so hard not to like say or like interrupt you there because you had so many like mic drop moments that I was like, oh, this is the social clip. Oh, this is the social clip. Anyway, thank you for that. Um,
No, great.
okay, so that leads me really well into another question that I wanted to ask. Some new features dropping in 2025. Are you able to share anything beyond the monetization and subscription model?
Um, well, one of the things I like to talk to creators about is, we talk about our website. You can use website URLs as your domain. And for a long time, I think people are like, but why? Like, if you don't have a brand presence, you're like, why does that matter? And I point to the feature we're going to launch is, imagine if you can actually click on that URL and then you have control of that experience, like what that opens up to. Right. And so that to me is the future, is like you own your presence, Kirsty. Like you can put all parts of you together and not limited to some sort of like link system or some sort of like formatted profile page. Like, no, you should be able to go control that because your online presence in some ways is you as a person. And so far that has been just completely fragmented across so many platforms, and we aren't allowed to show all of who we are. So that's a feature that's coming that we're really excited about.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited for that as well. I'm gonna go right back onto Blue Sky and start curating content. I think my calling is now to become a curator. I really like the sound of that. I feel like I have good taste.
Yes, I think me too.
That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to close out with one final question, just for fun. What is your favorite Blue Sky feature?
Oh, my favorite Blue Sky feature is the starter packs, because I think that we don't have a way of bridging offline or like live events and online communities today, right? Like the hashtags are maybe our best way, and it's pretty clunky. And so starter packs, you can basically have a hashtag, or sorry, not a hashtag, a QR code. And so if Buffer has a conference or something, then you can just put that QR code everywhere. And so then people can kind of drop into the feed about the Buffer conference immediately. And then all the people who are at the conference are part of the followers, and you can just immediately follow all of them. And so to me, I've oftentimes met so many people offline, and I'm like, how are we going to stay in touch? And then we don't. And so I'm really excited for more people to use our starter packs, so that we can actually build relationships over time.
That's fantastic. I am Lindsay. When you listen to the recording, Lindsay is our social media manager. I think we need to do a custom feed for Buffer Retreat 2025. I think that is that's such a great idea. Of course, that's such a great use case. I hadn't even thought about that. Rose, thank you. That was everything I wanted to ask you. That was a wonderful note to end on. Is there anything else you'd like to share before? I mean, we have a few minutes. I know you're very busy, but is there anything else you'd like to share about the future of Blue Sky, or things you're excited about, or anything that's on your mind after this conversation?
Well, I think this is a moment for me to shout out to Buffer and the audience you're building, which is that I'm here because you guys are such great partners, and we keep pretty close ties. And so, we're a small team of 20, but if you can't reach us, like, please talk to the Buffer team, and they'll definitely get to us what you guys are looking for. And we can't build Blue Sky without all of you, because it's built by the people for the people.
I'm actually getting a little bit emotional right now. I think I don't, yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you, Rose. That was beautiful. Thank you again for your time. I know running a social media platform with hundreds of thousands of users joining every single day is probably a heck of a lot of work. So I do really appreciate you coming on. For folks who still feel a little bit confused about Blue Sky and some of the terms we maybe talked about in this interview, and they're not sure where to start, we have some great resources for you on the Buffer blog and a YouTube walkthrough for beginners. Blue Sky also has some fantastic content. I will link to everything in the show notes, and of course, Rose's Blue Sky handle, so you can find her and check out her cozy corner of the internet, because it is cozy. It is cozy. There are a lot of people there, but it feels warm and welcoming to me.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rose. It was a delight to chat to you.
It was so fun. Thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to always chat with you guys about Bluesky and Buffer.